The hospital room was quiet except for the steady beep of a heart monitor. Machines hummed softly, and the smell of antiseptic hung in the air. Emily sat beside her father's bed, holding his hand, afraid to let go. Doctors had already said there wasn't much time left. Family had come and gone. Prayers had been whispered. Tears had fallen then, just as the sun began to set outside the window. A stranger walked in and whispered something no one expected. Before we begin, if stories like this touch your heart, make sure to subscribe, like this video, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Welcome to Kindness Story Hub, where we share powerful, real-life inspired stories that remind us how much light still exists in this world. Emily hadn't slept in 2 days. The plastic chair beside her father's hospital bed had become her temporary home. She watched every rise and fall of his chest, every flicker of movement in his face. Her father, Robert Thompson, had always been strong. A retired firefighter, he was the kind of man who ran toward danger while others ran away. But cancer doesn't care how brave you are. The diagnosis had come suddenly, and the decline had been even faster. Within months, the man who used to carry Emily on his shoulders at county fairs was now too weak to lift a glass of water. That evening, the hospital felt heavier than usual. Emily's mother had stepped out to get coffee. Her younger brother was downstairs taking a break. It was just Emily and her dad. She leaned close to him. "I'm here, Dad," she whispered. His eyes were closed, but she thought she saw his fingers tighten slightly around hers. A soft knock came at the door. Emily looked up, expecting a nurse. Instead, she saw a man she didn't recognize. He was probably in his late 30s, wearing simple jeans and a clean blue shirt. He held a small paper bag in his hands and looked nervous, like someone who wasn't sure if they were in the right place. "Hi," he said gently. "Is this Mr. Robert Thompson's room?" Emily hesitated. "Yes, can I help you?" The man stepped in slowly. "My name is Daniel. I know this might sound strange, but I was hoping I could say a few words to him." Emily's first reaction was suspicion. The hospital wasn't a place for random visitors. "How do you know my dad?" she asked carefully. Daniel swallowed. "He probably doesn't remember me. It was over 20 years ago." Emily looked back at her father. He was barely conscious. She didn't want any drama, any confusion, but there was something in Daniel's eyes, something honest and fragile. "Okay," she said softly. "Just keep it short." Daniel nodded gratefully. He walked to the other side of the bed and looked at the man lying there. For a moment, he didn't speak. His eyes filled with tears. "Mr. Thompson," he began quietly, "you saved my life." Emily's head snapped up. Daniel continued, his voice trembling. "I was 12 years old. There was a fire in our apartment building on Maple Street. My mom worked nights. I was home alone. I was trapped in my bedroom." Emily felt her heart pound. Her father had told countless stories about fires over the years, but she never remembered specific names. "You were the firefighter who carried me out," Daniel said. "I remember your voice. You told me, 'I've got you. Don't be scared.'" A tear rolled down Daniel's cheek. "You didn't just save me from that fire," he whispered. "You changed my life." Emily looked at her father's face. His eyes were still closed, but his breathing seemed deeper somehow. Daniel took a shaky breath. "After that night, I decided I wanted to help people the way you helped me. I studied hard. I stayed out of trouble. I became a paramedic." He let out a small, emotional laugh. "Every time I carry someone into an ambulance, I think about you." Emily felt her chest tighten. She had grown up knowing her father was a hero. But hearing it from someone who had been a scared child once, was different. I found out you were here through a former captain, Daniel said. When I heard you were sick, I couldn't just stay away. I needed to say thank you. He reached into the paper bag and pulled out a small, framed photograph. It was a picture of a young boy standing beside a fire truck, smiling wide. Next to him stood a younger version of Robert Thompson in full firefighter gear. I kept this all these years, Daniel said, placing the photo gently on the bedside table. Emily covered her mouth with her hand, then Daniel leaned closer to the bed, and that's when he whispered something no one expected. You didn't just save me, he said softly. You taught me how to be brave. And because of you, hundreds of other people are alive today. The room fell silent except for the steady beeping of the monitor. For a second, nothing happened. Then, slowly, Robert's eyelids fluttered. Emily gasped. Dad? His eyes opened slightly, unfocused at first. Then they shifted toward Daniel. Daniel froze, not sure if he should speak again. Robert's lips moved. The words were faint, almost impossible to hear, but Emily leaned close. Maple Street, he murmured. Daniel let out a broken sob. Yes, sir. A weak smile formed on Robert's face. You were the kid with the baseball posters. Daniel laughed through tears. Yeah. That was me. Emily couldn't believe it. Her father remembered. For the next few minutes, something incredible happened. Robert, who had barely spoken all day, seemed more alert than he had been in weeks. He listened as Daniel shared stories about becoming a paramedic, about the lives he had touched, about the people he had pulled from car accidents and burning homes. It's because of you, Daniel kept saying. Robert's hand trembled slightly as he reached toward Daniel. Daniel quickly held it. You did good, Robert whispered. Those three simple words seemed to fill the entire room. When Emily's mother returned with coffee and saw the scene, she stood frozen in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. Emily ran to her and explained everything in hushed, amazed words. Daniel stayed for nearly an hour. He didn't talk about illness or fear. He talked about hope. About second chances. About how one act of courage on an ordinary night had created a ripple effect that no one could have predicted. Before leaving, Daniel turned to Emily. Your dad may not realize how many lives he touched, he said. But I promise you, it's more than you can imagine. After Daniel left, the room felt different. Lighter somehow. Robert drifted back into sleep, but there was a peacefulness in his expression that hadn't been there before that night. Emily didn't feel the same crushing weight in her chest. She kept thinking about what Daniel had said. One act of kindness. One brave moment. And because of that, hundreds of lives had been saved. Her father had never bragged about his rescues. He had come home after long shifts, tired and smelling of smoke, and simply asked what was for dinner. He had shown up at school events. Fixed broken bikes. Taught her how to drive. He never once said, I'm a hero. But kindness doesn't need applause. It just needs action. Robert passed away peacefully 2 days later, surrounded by his family. At the funeral, something remarkable happened. One by one, people stood up to speak. A woman whose husband had survived a house fire. A man who had been pulled from a wrecked car. A now-grown teenager who had once been rescued from a frozen lake. And Daniel. He stepped forward in his paramedic uniform. If you're here today, he said to the crowded church, there's a good chance your life was touched by this man. And if you've ever been helped by someone I've rescued, then you were touched by him too. The room was filled with quiet sobs. Emily looked around and realized her father's life had been like a stone dropped into water. The ripples had traveled far beyond what he could see. After the service, Daniel approached Emily again. I meant what I said, he told her. Your dad changed the course of my life. And because of that, he changed countless others. Emily hugged him tightly. "Thank you," she said. "For coming to the hospital. For telling him." Daniel shook his head gently. "No," he replied. "Thank him." In the weeks that followed, Emily found herself thinking differently about kindness. It wasn't always about grand gestures. Sometimes it was a reassuring voice in a burning building. Sometimes it was 3 quiet words. "You did good." She began volunteering at a local community center on weekends. Not because she had to. Not because anyone expected her to, but because she had seen, with her own eyes, how far kindness could travel. Years later, she would still remember that evening in the hospital room. The stranger at the door. The whispered words. The flicker of recognition in her father's eyes. At the hospital bed, a stranger had come to say thank you, but what he really gave was something much greater. He gave a family peace. He gave a dying man the gift of knowing his life had mattered, and he reminded everyone in that room that kindness never truly ends. It moves from person to person, heart to heart, generation to generation. You may never see the full impact of a kind act. You may never know how far your words travel or how deeply your courage reaches into someone else's story, but somewhere, years from now, someone might walk into a room and whisper, "Because of you, I'm still here." And that is the quiet, unstoppable power of kindness. If this story touched your heart, remember, you don't have to be a firefighter to save a life. A smile, a helping hand, a moment of compassion, these small things matter more than you think. Let's choose kindness today. Because you never know whose future you might be changing.